I have a condition. It's something that affects my daily life. The experts disagree as to what causes this, so it has no specific diagnostic term. But in the common language, it's known as harebrained. The sensible people describe the efforts of the harebrained in pretty uncomplimentary terms. Half-baked, ill-conceived, unrealistic. And they're not wrong. Living with a harebrain can be a real challenge. All of that wasted energy and dashed hopes. People with my condition tend to get all fired up and charge ahead without considering the possible negative outcomes. The sensible people avoid these fiascos daily with no effort whatsoever. Yet, being harebrained is also kind of limitless. It comes with certain freedoms that I really, really like. And I will fight the constraints of common sense for those freedoms. There's a good comparison in the case file of neurologist Oliver Sacks. He once treated a patient named Ray. Ray had a bad case of Tourette's syndrome, and he suffered from violent verbal and physical tics that made his life difficult. Dr. Sacks prescribed medication and scheduled another appointment. By the next visit, Ray had changed. He was no longer yelling obscenities in the subway, and his concentration seemed to be way better. He was mostly calm and civil. He didn't like it. Ray felt like he'd been slowed down. He said he missed his old inventiveness and spontaneity and wildness and wit. So the solution was a compromise. Ray would take his medication Monday to Friday and have Tourette's on the weekends. I can relate. And I suspect some of you can too. It seems most of these TED Talks are held by astronauts or people who discovered penicillin. But who ever speaks for the amateurs, the inept, the incompetent, the magical thinkers? I will. I'll share a harebrained scheme or two, now that you know my handicap. The first one was opening an independent bookstore. I love those. To me, they're like tiny cathedrals. Written language is a key criteria for civilization. It's up there with infrastructure or a stable food supply. Bookstores are places of connection to the past, the now, the future, to other people, to the human condition. We cannot afford to lose them. A few years ago, the book trade was in a slump. Bookstores were going out of business left and right. Book sales were decreasing, and everyone was worried about the e-book replacing the paper book. Human interaction was going out of style too, courtesy of Amazon. And that was only one of the horsemen of the coming retail apocalypse. So of course, that's when my friend Andreas and I opened our shop in Oslo. Now, we didn't have experience or education or business savvy or market research, but that didn't matter. How hard could it be? We'd only stock the good books anyway, and they sell themselves, don't they? What we did have was an ideal, a return to the old school bookstore, a space for exploration, an exchange of ideas, of time slowed down, quality over quantity, love of lit over love of profit. No sales tricks, just good books and great coffee. It was going to be fantastic, and it has been. The store has been the location for thousands of conversations, hundreds of readings and concerts. There have been debate nights, parties, weddings, even fights. Good times. However small, we felt like we were making a difference. Now, the first year, we didn't make enough money to draw salaries. That didn't matter. No worry, we'd work for free. We had side gigs. It was going to be fine. On the second year, we didn't make enough money to draw salaries. Okay. We'd work for free. This was going to take some time. By the third year, it was getting ridiculous. Only closing for good made any kind of sense, even to a seasoned magical thinker like myself. Something had to give. And that's when the rescue plan appeared. We sell books, I thought. Could we maybe make books too? My harebrain raised its ears. The bookstore in book form. Good, heavy paper, stitched spine, hand-bound by real bookbinders, in calfskin leather. Ooh. It would be a love letter to real books. Wait, 1,000 love letters. If it could be done, it just might save us. And it would break every rule of the industry. It would be a nice counterattack on the ebook too, showcasing every delicious tactile feature that a Kindle will never replicate. Man, I was so pleased with myself for this plan. As long as I kept ignoring that I could neither write the book, nor print it, or bind it, or pay for its production. That sunk in later. I'd need help, and lots of it. Some sort of anthology then. Or an encyclopedia. They don't print those anymore. Wait, that format could be appropriated for that very reason. It could be fictional too. A subjective lexicon, yes. A dictionary you could disagree with. Full of definitions you couldn't Google. I was pretty sure this was a great plan. And what better way to stand up for the paper book than to revive a format that had gone out of print because of the internet? All I had to do was find 50 or so writers and artists who would donate their talent, a bookbinder, a book printer, a mountain of cash, and a basic grasp of publishing, editing, and budgets. So I started asking people whose work I like to join me. And they did. They seemed to get the point of the thing without much explanation. Nobody cared that the work was unpaid. All told, 86 people said yes. They were writers and poets, teachers, comics, rappers, and architects. A black metal pioneer, an actor with Down syndrome, a veteran cop. All talented, generous risk-takers with a nonconformist streak a mile wide. Clearly, dreamers. But they didn't think this was crazy, or if they did, they were still glad to help. I was delighted and grateful. Not surprised, though. That people are awesome is just a basic assumption to us harebrains. To bind 1,000 books, we'd need around 30,000 euros, even with me assuming the duties of publisher and editor for free. That's pretty hairy. So we started an 8-week crowdfunding campaign. And what happened next was the exact opposite of what any focus group would have predicted. We were halfway financed within the first 2 weeks. What was going on? It turns out the shop had many more allies than we knew about. The ideals we stick to mean something to a lot of people. Those people wanted to show support, and this was a chance for them to turn activist. Share the news about the campaign to others, and you're a co-conspirator. Help building the budget by pre-ordering a copy, and you're a producer. Doing either makes you an ambassador, and having ambassadors beats any kind of paid advertising, hands down. Because ambassadors don't want to sell you something. They want to share it with you. In the end, the project was 161% overfinanced, and it was made by 87 writers and artists, 443 producers, a bookbinder, a book printer, and thousands of ambassadors. No one saw that coming. And it's my main point today. I'll give you 2 examples. One night, a thief smashed the shop's glass door and stole the very first copy of the lexicon. Within 2 days, a customer has started collecting money to replace the door, and the donations poured in. A week later, they handed over the money to us. "Thank you," we said, "but this is way more than we need." "Maybe spend the rest on an alarm system," was the reply. Another example. Last winter, we were back in the red. We talked again of closing up the shop and go look for grown-up jobs. A second volume of the encyclopedia had been published in 2016, and that had kept us afloat for the last 2 years. A German translation was coming out in spring, but we had nothing new in the works. So I thought we'd better be honest about our situation. And so I created the Bankruptometer. It's a simple dial on a sign with a hand pointing out exactly how far we are from closing for good. The scale ranging from so long to account in the Caymans. Now, we posted a picture of it and put the sign in our window. People could take action if they cared to. Sales increased by 600% the following month. Whenever people show us that kind of love, we tend to react by giving away stuff. I know. Since this was December, we announced that we'd set aside 3 copies of the encyclopedia to be picked up for free by people who were good, resourceful, and broke, struggling to afford gifts. To avoid any awkwardness when picking up these books, we told people to use a simple, discreet hand signal. Simply show up in the store, give your salesperson the finger, and he would hand you a book, no questions asked. We didn't get flipped off much, but sales of the book immediately went up. And when we asked our customers if they wanted it gift-wrapped, they said, "No, just leave it on the counter for the people who can't afford to pay for it." It's the single most beautiful thing to come out of all of this. The generosity was bottom-up organized and self-sustaining. It now had a life of its own. Turns out people really like to help each other. friends or strangers, it doesn't seem to matter. When one person helps another, it creates a connection. If a group share this connection, they turn into a community. If that community keeps growing, it can turn into a movement, so use that wisely. You may not know them, but there are people out there ready to help you. They'll support your idea if you show them how. They share your values, and they can make a difference. It doesn't have to be a realistic idea. It can be half-baked, ill-conceived, absurd. What is harebrained, after all, is simply a matter of perspective. And you never know who might subscribe to yours. It doesn't have to be books, but it does have to be independent. Corporations can't stir this kind of passion, but coming together for an idea can. You are not alone. Help is on the way. Thank you.